Today's episode is brought to you by Media for All, which was set up to help encourage more Black, Asian, and other ethnic talent into media, and to provide a support and mentoring network to ensure talent flourishes in the media industry that we all love. If you're looking for a mentor or would like to mentor young ethnic talent, check them out at mediaforall.org.uk, and it is all 100% free. Hello and welcome to the Shiny New Object podcast. My name is Tom Ollerton, and this is a podcast about the future of marketing. Every week or so, I have the pleasure and the privilege of interviewing one of our industry's leaders, and this week is no different. I'm on a call with Lee Kirton, who is Communications and Marketing Director at Bandai Namco Entertainment UK and Ireland. Lee, for those of the people in the audience who don't know who you are and what you do, can you just give us a quick overview of your career and the job you do today?
Sure. Hi, Tom. Pleasure to be here. My name's Lee Kirton, and I'm the Communications and Marketing Director at Bandai Namco Entertainment. I work in the video games industry primarily, and the entertainment industry as a whole, which it's become more of over the years, especially a company like Bandai Namco Entertainment, which could be foreseen as more of a sort of Disney-like company, especially in Japan, with the size of it being one of the biggest, if not the biggest, entertainment company in Japan. I started working in the games industry in 1997 when I was 20 years old. So it shows how old I am right now. It was always a passion of mine as a kid to be involved in the entertainment industry. I was very much into films when I was a kid and music, but I was infatuated with video games, I suppose, as most kids were in the 1980s, having pretty much all of the CPC computers and consoles and sitting there hours and hours pretending or trying to code and being just thrilled by these amazing images on screen that you could control. So I was really, really into the video games industry, but never thought in my entire lifetime that I would be working in it. But then in 1997, that changed, and I had an opportunity to join a company called GT Interactive, which was one of the biggest video game companies in the world, an American-based company. And I took on a very small role of working on the reception / customer services desk, which I kind of ended up turning into a bit of a broom cupboard for people calling in and asking questions about our games, and me giving sort of hints and tips and sending things out. And I realized after a while that it was something I really enjoyed doing, and that was one of the things I was really keen on doing, was actually talking to people. Really sociable person. I like to engage with people and help other people, and I found that it was an area within the company I was in that I could do quite a good job in. So I used to print out guides, and the internet had only been around for a short period of time, and the likes of emails and things like that were just quite fresh, and sort of helping people out and getting involved with customers. And the world's changed a lot now with social media. You wouldn't be able to do the job that I did back then now. But then slowly but surely realized that I really wanted to work closer with the games. So ended up quite lucky getting a position within the PR department at GT Interactive, working on games such as Unreal and Abe's Odyssey and Driver, these really big multi-million sort of unit selling games, and being responsible for the sort of campaign for them in the UK. And it gave me a sort of sense of ownership, working with really talented people that I sort of adored as a kid, and working with just these brilliant people, and always had a real love for drama and art at school. And it kind of gave me the opportunity to sort of involve myself in areas that I believed I was quite good at. So through the years, I was working at GT Interactive. The company got bought by a French company called Infogrames, and I rose up the ladder to another position as kind of head of PR and PR manager of those companies. And then I was at Atari, which was part of the same organization, for 10 years, leading titles such as the Matrix franchise with Enter the Matrix and Path Neo, and traveling abroad, and meeting directors of films, and doing all these things that I sort of really wanted to do when I was a kid before getting into the games industry. So it kind of touched on all the areas of my loves, which was music, games, films, art, drawing, all that kind of stuff. And And then, 23 years later, I'm still within the organization, proudly, still passionately working for Bandai Namco Entertainment.
Mate, what a lovely story. That sounds like an absolute fairy tale. There's going to be people listening to this going, well, that was easy for you back in the day to a degree. Definitely less competition in the job market. But what advice would you give to a smart, driven student that's doing all the right things, that's got a good degree, can hold their head up online and all the rest of it? But, what are the extra things that smart, driven student could do to start following in your footsteps?
Yeah, so you're right. In a way, when I joined the industry, it wasn't easy, but I certainly had to go in at a kind of position where I didn't think that would amount to anything. So, taking a job on a sort of front desk and going out getting cigars for the chairman, and taking calls and from Richard Branson, feeding them through to the boss, and kind of helping customers out with guides and things like that. I didn't think it was actually going to amount to anything, but for me, it was in my own mind, was a foot in the door, to which if I put my own passion, enthusiasm and graft and my personality into it, I believed that it would get somewhere. And it was most certainly down to a lot of hard work. Even though it sounds like a bit of a dream sort of position, and don't get me wrong, it is, the element of the social life that it takes from you is huge. And the world's changed over the years, because you wouldn't be expected to work sort of 15, 16 hours a day for 6 days a week and put all your energy in, which I was very happy and glad to do. And I believed that by doing it, it was going to further my career, and it did. But there are there's two ways now, and actually nowadays there are even more positions open within the interactive entertainment industry, or the entertainment industry as a whole, especially in the games market. I mean, now for me, running teams and managing teams and actually creating job roles that weren't available when I was 20 years old, such as community management, which is a really big part of every company now. Every company has a social media team, every company has dedicated customer services teams and communities that they look after, from Sky TV, or even a local mechanics, or a local bakery, or a cafe. They all have their own Facebook pages or Instagrams, or Twitter handles, where they can react and talk to customers on a regular basis. And back in my day, as I said, that was answering the phone to one person and sending something out in the post. And now you can be a lot more reactive to thousands of people through social media. And going back sort of 10 years, I created a community management team within our business, which now is a huge backbone of any big company, especially in the video games market, because you're actively talking to customers about the games, and you're providing information about what's coming up and what they can do. So I do believe there are more opportunities available for those that have degrees, and even those that don't. I mean, I've worked with agencies such as Inspiring Interns, which are a great agency who actually look after a number of young candidates who have different levels of degrees, who are interested in different things. And I can speak to them about, do you have anybody that would be available for this position? They would send me this whole entire, website page that have all these candidates that have got degrees in, certain different things. And I can look through those and see their videos online and interview them, and actually hired some really great, passionate people through this manner. So,
sorry, just to cut in there. It's great that you're using a service like that, but when you're going through all these CVs with different backgrounds and different videos, what stands out to you? If someone's listening to this and they're like, "Wow, I want to impress someone like Lee." What is the thing that always kind of sends up a flare for you?
For me, it's somebody that's like me, or somebody that was like how I was when I first started. And sometimes it all depends on who you're being interviewed by. I tend to do all these interviews, personally, in terms of the fact that, not just the HR team doing these interviews, making sure that we know the sort of person that we want to work with. The things that stand out for me is really seeing somebody come across well, that's very passionate about the passionate about the role they're applying for, but also passionate about the industry that they're getting into. I mean, in a way, there's nothing worse than hiring somebody that wants to work in, music, that hasn't got a care for music at all. It's making sure that person comes across very passionately about what they're actually doing. And that doesn't necessarily always come down to somebody that's got the best degrees. It could be, somebody that's just incredibly passionate in themselves, very has that work ethic in terms of wanting to work hard, because it sounds a dream to work in this industry. And don't get me wrong, it is, but there's a huge amount of work that goes on behind the scenes and pressure. So it's making sure that that person is able to, articulate, able to have a conversation, able to come across in terms of their personality, and demonstrates passion and enthusiasm for what they're doing. Obviously, it's very different. It's very difficult, obviously, as well, until you actually hire somebody, until they're actually in the workplace to see whether that was all true or not.
So are you ever looking out for passion for the product or passion for the process? So I'm really passionate about film, right? But only the output. I'm not passionate about making them, or like going on set or standing there in the rain holding like a whatever you call that long thing with the fur thing on the end, and so I would be a bad person to go and work in movies, because I love sitting there and watching them, but I'm not passionate about the process. Is that do you look for that difference, or does that matter?
I think it does, because anyone can say, yeah, I like games, but for me, that's not enough. It's got to be somebody that has an interest in, especially depending on the role as well, whether it's a marketing role, whether it's a community manager's role or a PR role or an events role. It has to be somebody that's genuinely interested in the process, in the company. It's amazing how many people I have interviewed that I asked them to tell me a little bit about the company, our company, and most of them don't know a lot. And I think it's a simple thing to actually read up about a company and find a bit about the background. The fact that we created PacMan in 1980, and we're a global entertainment company. We have amusement centres and arcades and video games and an animation. These things are readily available online, and I do believe it's really important that people do their research when they're going in for interviews. It's certainly something that I used to do, and it's really important to that company, because in the end, when you want somebody to join your business, you want them to be part of the business, to actually contribute towards the business success, of course, whilst we can invest in that person as well and take them to a position where hopefully they stay with the business, or hopefully they go on to another company, taking all that experience that they've learned working with myself and the rest of the team. And I've been really lucky to work with some great people over the last 2 decades that I've managed or worked with directly, who have left the company and gone on to another company in a much bigger role. And for me, I'm always kind of disappointed to lose good people, but at the same time, happy that I've kind of contributed to their sort of future in a way, by sort of giving them all the experience and things that I've learned over the years, and they take them on to somewhere else. So it is important that people display a passion about the overall industry. Otherwise, they're just not going to take an interest in their day-to-day work, or a passion, or want to get up at 7 o'clock in the morning ready to start work. And if you're interested and passionate about it, then you're going to do everything you possibly can to make a success for yourself.
So, quick question: what has been the best investment of your time, energy, or money in the past 5 years?
So it's a good question. Would this relate to me personally in terms of what I do, or would it relate to just anything in the workplace?
Yeah, in terms of work, what are you like? Oh, thank God I put my time into this, or put my money into this, or whatever.
I think the best thing you can possibly do, and the best time, is based on relationships and how you come across to other people and how you maintain those relationships. And those relationships could be anything between the relationships you have with your team that you work with on a day-to-day basis, but most importantly, the people that you deal with in the outside world who make a huge impact into your role and your business. So that could be anything from talking to the press and having great relationships with them, to even the general public. I talk a lot on Twitter. I mean, I'm not a big fan of Twitter. I can't stand it. but I use it, I use it religiously for work, because my first job was doing that, but verbally on the phone and sending letters out. And now there's this platform there. You can actively engage with people, customers, media, content creators, events managers. And for me, relationships are the most important thing, which I think a lot of people have missed out on, and a lot of people don't feel are important anymore. That virtual relationship is no way the same as a personal relationship. The amount of things that I've managed to do and the amount of brilliant creative projects I've managed to get off the ground has been purely based on obviously what's in my head and working with my team, but also based on the relationships that I've had over the years and getting the trust from people, and not just the people that you work with externally, but the trust you get within. I work for a Japanese company, and working with the Japanese is quite difficult. They have to know how to trust you. They have to make sure that you're right for their project or their game or their company. And it takes a lot of years and trust to get that, and hard work. And for me, one of the things that I can honestly say, and having looked at lovely LinkedIn recommendations I've been given from bosses I've worked with in the past, they've all said the same thing, that it's always been a pleasure to work with me, in terms of, because of my passion and care about everything I do. When I walk into a project, I want the best from it, but I want to make sure that everybody that works on it is really looked after, everything goes really well, and that there are no problems behind it. So for me, I think relationships are the most important thing. And if you're the sort of person that just wants to come in and do your job and go home and not build on relationships, then that's not going to benefit you in the long run.
So I can relate to that, and I think that we are quite similar in a way. Like your front desk story, and not that I had a similar role to that, but like I have built my career, good or bad, out of relationships. Absolutely, I'm very confident and comfortable with that, and it sounds like obviously you are as well.
Absolutely.
But what if you're not that kind of person? What if you're an introvert and the building relationships is awkward and difficult?
Mm-hmm.
How do you suggest someone who believes in what you're saying can apply their theory when that comes very hard to them?
Well, I mean, I have worked with people that are more introvert, and they are happier with their relationships through social media. And being old, as you could potentially possibly say, at 43 years old, which to a 20-year-old now is old. My method of working could be seen as quite old school to them, even though it's still very important. But to those that maybe aren't comfortable with having similar kind of relationships, and I know people like that, they do have the power of social media. And I know lots of people that have great relationships with people they've never met, and as far as they're concerned, they're best friends and best buddies, and they interact through Twitter, Instagram, every other platform you can possibly imagine, Slack and all sorts, and they even on forums, and they tend to have these huge relationships built up with people and communities and people that are in the same job space as them through other companies, but they do that virtually, or they do that digitally. So I personally believe the better relationships are personal, and that is the best way to do business. Occasionally you do have to go out and see people. Last Friday I was at a shoot for one of our games for a big advert I was working on, and you have to be there, you have to go there, you have to have a relationship with the crew and the agency that's coming up with the creative for you, and the talent that you've had involved. You can't do that from behind a computer. So depending on the roles that you're in, you have to have a level of social engagement with people, and that's important. I couldn't obviously have people working with me as an event manager that wasn't happy to go to events and talk to people and have a relationship with the company. So, but though there are roles obviously there for the more introverted people, in terms of social media managers are more sort of can be in that sense. a lot of working from home, a lot of just spending time on social media. So it's not have to in certain roles, but it certainly is a have to in other roles.
This episode of the Shiny New Object podcast is brought to you in partnership with Madfest. Whether it's live in London or streamed online to the global marketing community, you can always expect a distinctive and daring blend of fast-paced content, startup innovation pitches, and unconventional entertainment from Madfest events. You'll find me causing trouble on stage, recording live versions of this podcast, and sharing a beer with the nicest and most influential people in marketing. Check it out at www.madfestlondon.com. So we're at the halfway stage now, so we're going to move on to your shiny new object, which is an odd one. And we agreed this the other day, but your shiny new object is using brand assets to inspire kids' imaginations. Now, can you just give a brief description of what that is, and then tell us your experience of having applied that approach to your marketing and your work?
Yeah, well, recently I was lucky enough to be part of an innovations team within the company, and that was put together specifically to come up with new projects and new innovations within the entertainment space that maybe hadn't been done before. And we came up with lots of different ideas, and specific idea that I came up with was how we can interact with children more so on the educational side of things. So Bandai Namco Entertainment as a company is a very kind of CSR focused company. For the last 23 years, I've worked on some of the biggest driving games, adult action adventures, fighting games, role-playing games, all sorts. So I've had the experience of launching, multi-million pound projects and really successful projects. So being part and still working on those now. And being part of this innovations group was great for me because I'm quite a creative head. I mean, the one or two good things I was very passionate about at school and really put a lot of time into with drama, but also in terms of design and innovation, which was a thing that I was really keen on. So, one of the things I was really keen on, especially with a role that I have looking after as an ambassador, our biggest sort of character, which is PacMan, who's 40 years old this year, and our most important character, PacMan made $1 billion in its first year in 1981 just on licensed goods. It's still pop culture today, has 98% awareness rate across the world. Everybody knows PacMan. And I'd been using PacMan as a case study for some of the schools that I've been doing presentations for. So I came up with an assignment for some schools, and our office is next door to a school in Richmond, and they were really keen on this assignment, and they brought their year 7 and 8 in to come in sort of like an assembly, and I presented them the history of the company, the history of the video games industry, the history of interactive entertainment, where it all started. I talked about graphics and how vector graphics ruled the 80s with games like Star Wars, and when Star Wars came out in 1977, look where it's evolved and look how it's gone. And that's still an important IP even today. And I used PacMan as a case study to say, who here knows PacMan? And everyone put their hand up, even these kids that are really young, which gave it a sense of belief that kids still really know who PacMan is, even though there's not a huge amount of content out there for them. So doing these projects at school, which I really enjoyed, I managed to get kids sort of teaming up as like sort of junior apprentice to work on designing their own video game character, but using PacMan as an inspiration, and then working together, coming up with the game idea, where the world's set, thinking about the environment, no violence, that kind of thing. And these projects are really good, and I've been doing it for about 4 years now with the kids. So as part of my innovations group, I wanted to do interactive storytelling. So initially it was doing this on utilizing iOS device like an iPad or iPhone, and having page turning stories that kind of came to life. But then I'd had a series of meetings with Amazon, and I was talking about the voice activated platforms such as the Alexa, and a friend, an industry friend of mine and a bit of a legend to me as a kid, Ian Livingston, who created the fighting fantasy books, which some of us will remember, where you turn the page to page 5 and you want to defeat the goblin, turn to page 60, and then you'd find out you've lost or you cheat, and all these fighting fantasy books. I love the way that they were designed. So I wanted to actually work on a similar mechanic, but for the Alexa device, so that kids could listen to a story, fully interactive story, which had a cast of actors, so it wasn't using the Alexa voice, a proper narrator, great music, great high production values, but each story was focused on really important aspects of our kids' lives. Learning how to be respectful, not throwing your rubbish on the floor, eating well, doing your athletics, and keeping fit. So I thought, how can I take these really important things and put those into fun, educational, funny stories? And I thought also, Monday to Friday, you take your kids to bed and you read to them, or they read to you. But on a Friday evening, you might come back, and as lazy parents we can be, we'll just put Netflix on for them when they're in bed, or give them the iPad. And I thought, this is a great way to have something else. So you can listen to the story with your mum or dad, and you can work together to make decisions, which you do by voice. And voice is important. It helps kids to speak, it helps them to listen, and it's good for engagement. So luckily enough, the company really liked this idea, and I managed to draft it all up and find a developer in Brighton and speak to Amazon. Amazon loved it, and then we went on to create PacMan Stories. So what I wanted to do is utilize the character PacMan as the kind of the sort of background catalyst for this whole entire storytelling. Because Pac-Man, you don't play as Pac-Man in the story, you play as yourself, but you're in Pac-Man Planet. And within Pac-Man Planet is, characters you might know from Pac-Man's universe. Pac-Man comes along with you in the story and helps you. And actually we can incorporate brand new characters into the, Pac-Man Planet, such as, a farmer, like Farmer Giles, or a policeman, or so-and-so. We've seen these kind of characters and heard these characters before in many children's stories. So we recorded the first story with a bunch of actors who were really good at Audible, and a friend of mine actually wrote the story, and we wrote it in a fashion using a program called Twine, which allows you to write a script, but it allows you to write it in that choose your own adventure story method that you've seen in TV shows like Bandersnatch and Ian Livingstone's books. And you make one decision, you go there, you make another decision, you go there. And the whole idea is that whatever decision the child makes, which is a positive, important decision, such as there's a duck and he's in the pond and the duck's saying, help me, I've got plastic trapped around my feet, someone's thrown all this plastic in the pond. And you get the opportunity to say, do you want to help the duck, or do you want to continue down the path and see so-and-so? The child says, I'd like to help the duck. The duck's relieved that you've helped him, swims off, comes back with a shiny power pellet, obviously relates to Pac-Man's universe. You then take the power pellet and Alexa calculates how many power pellets you've got. So at the end of the story, based on all of your positive decisions and goodwill and good things that you've done, you'll get the perfect ending to say, you've collected seven or more power pellets. This is great. You've got to the end and you found out who was behind the rubbish that was scattered all over Pac-Man Planet. It's always one of the ghosts. That was the key thing. I really wanted to have Inky, Blinky, Pinky, and Clyde, who are the famous ghosts, part of Pac-Man's universe, having that kind of Scooby-Doo moment where it's revealed that they're the ones that have been, throwing this garbage on the floor or doing this, but there's a reason why they've done it, and then there's an understanding at the end why they shouldn't have done it. So the first story came out and people really enjoy it. It's totally free, and we've just finished the second story, which is going to be out next week. So it's great because the feedback on Amazon's review site has been really good. It's nice to put something innovative and different into the market, and it's just perfect on so many levels. And it's been a real pleasure to actually be able to be involved creating it.
So there's going to be a lot of people listening to this thinking, that's amazing, that's really cool, how imaginative, how brilliant that you give up some of your time to educate these kids. But what would a brand do that doesn't have a Pac-Man? how could they use the approach of educating or inspiring the next generation with their brand assets? Not necessarily kids, could be teens or students or whatever.
Yeah.
What can other brands learn from what you've done?
I don't actually think that PacMan was the real big, let's say, the big thing that's made this pretty successful. I think that even if we hadn't have had PacMan, would have found a way of doing this without the character and coming up with a new character for this. I'm lucky with the likes of iOS and Android, which iOS and Android is quite saturated now with obviously apps, and there's a lot of storytelling apps available. The key thing for me is looking out for that opportunity and being first to market. I've always been very, very focused on being the first for everything, and nothing that I do is for my own benefit, because I work for a company. I get my salary like everybody else does each month. Sometimes I feel that I should be doing these as a sideline, but ultimately, a decade ago, I wanted to do the first driving theory exam on a Nintendo DS. And people were like, why would you do that? That you can learn how to do the driving theory exam on a PC disc, and all of that. And I said, well, there are millions of Nintendo DSs out in the market. And, if you look at the audience demographic of people that have these devices, there's a lot of teenagers learning how to drive. And one or two of the key areas of learning how to drive is doing your theory tests and your highway code. And I said, what if we could extrapolate that data from the DSA, the Driving Standards Agency, work with them closely to bring the multiple choice tests that they can practice and rehearse and test themselves over and over again, and bring that to the DS. And ultimately, I managed to do that, and it worked, and it was the first time anybody had ever done that for that Nintendo platform. So I think there's so many ideas out there of things you can do that are really positive. It's difficult because PacMan Stories is not profitable in any way. So that's the difficulty. I think me sitting within a big organization that has money, it's easy to offset something like this as a positive thing to do for families and children and educational. Some of the company look at it as, yeah, that's cool, but it doesn't make the company any money. And I see it differently as, yeah, but all the other stuff that we're doing does make the company money. And actually what we're doing here is ultimately is giving something back, and it's giving something to the community, to the parents, to the kids. That's educational, fun and exciting. But without PacMan, I probably would have come up with a new character anyway, because it's kids adapt to any character. Freddie the fireman or whatever. You can create anything nowadays. And I think I was just happy to be able to attach PacMan to it.
So we're going to have to leave it there, Lee. We're at time, which is devastating. And I had no idea about the DS story. And there's two absolute banging stories there about being innovative with your marketing. So thank you for sharing that. If someone wanted to get in touch with you about working with you or any of the things that you've talked about, how would you like them to do that?
If anybody would like any advice or would like to chew my ear on the industry or anything else like that, the best place to get me in, where I'm pretty active, is on Twitter. My actual Twitter handle is Lee Ari Gold, so it's LeeAriGold. But I'm also on LinkedIn as well with Lee Kirton. So always happy to give a bit of advice, especially for anybody that's looking to get into the games industry. There's always advice I can give. It's a shame that events aren't happening at the moment, because we have a lot of community, we have a lot of events in the games industry, and those are the places that we meet people, and people come and talk to us and say, this is great, how do I get involved? And we've even hired people in the past and meeting up with them at consumer shows. So hopefully when the world gets back to normal, we'll be able to engage a bit more with people that are excited about getting into this industry.
Thank you so much for your time.
Cheers.
Hi, just before you go, I'd really appreciate it if you could take the time to write a review of the Shiny New Object podcast on Apple Podcasts or iTunes, whatever it's called these days, or whichever podcast provider you use. We're an indie podcast, so it would go a long way for us if you could just share the word and give us a bit of a support on those channels. That would just be fantastic. If you haven't got time, that's also cool. And yeah, if you could tell your colleagues about the podcast, and also, if possible, don't forget to subscribe. And I'd love to hear your feedback. If you'd like to speak on the podcast or be a guest, or you think I'm asking the wrong questions, anything, I'd be super interested to hear what you think. So please email me at tom@automatedcreative.net. That's TOM at, I'm not going to bother spelling it. Anyway, you'll work it out. Thanks so much.